You've heard the whispers, the stories, about the Order and their twisted rituals. It all began when I uncovered the truth buried beneath the world of music, a truth hidden behind fame, power, and blood. In my search for answers, I found myself face to face with Kelly, locked away, but still shrouded in the darkness of the Order. His cryptic words about relics and blood sacrifice have haunted me ever since. "The Order doesn't end, Daniel," he said. "They only begin." What I witnessed wasn't just a conspiracy. It was horror incarnate, relics that pulsed with life, rituals that defied reality, shadows that moved with intent. I thought I had stopped them. I was wrong. This is part 2 of the old one. People think the hardest part of uncovering a dark truth is accepting it. They're wrong. The hardest part is living with it. Months have passed since that night. The ritual, the flames, and the shards of the relic I thought I had destroyed. But the shadows remain, clinging to me like smoke, whispering secrets I don't want to hear. The Order is still out there, regrouping, plotting. Their ritual failed, but their purpose hasn't changed. To summon something ancient, something monstrous. Aaliyah was just the beginning, a tragic pawn in a game that stretches back centuries. The visions haven't stopped. They come to me in fragments, like broken glass reflecting a nightmare I can't fully piece together. Aaliyah's voice is always there, soft, urgent, guiding me, warning me. And then there are the others, the men in suits, the veiled faces, the darkened rooms where decisions are made in whispers. I thought I could walk away. I thought exposing them would be enough. But I know better now. The Order's reach is vast, its roots buried deep in the soil of power and corruption. They don't just control the music industry, they shape it, bend it to their will, using it as a tool to feed their ancient hunger. I thought I could live with the scars. But when the whispers grew louder, pointing me to a name I hadn't dared to utter in years, I knew I couldn't stay silent. Kelly. He was more than a fallen icon. He was a man tangled in the same web of darkness that ensnared Aaliyah. And if the whispers were true, he had answers I desperately needed. I didn't want to face him, but I had no choice. The shadows wouldn't let me rest until I did. The visitation room buzzed with an artificial hum, the fluorescent lights casting a sterile glow that made everything feel unreal. I adjusted in my seat, the metal cold even through the fabric of my jeans. My palms were sweaty, not from fear but from anticipation. I had been chasing this lead for months, knowing it could be a dead end or worse. A door I wasn't ready to open. And then he entered. Kelly, the man who had once been larger than life, now shuffled in like a ghost of himself, shoulders hunched, hands shackled in steel. Across from him, his once pristine voice, once capable of commanding stadiums, was now muted by years of shame and isolation. But his eyes still held something dangerous. Not power exactly, but the memory of it. I waited as the guards seated him, their movements mechanical, detached. The man across from me, despite the orange jumpsuit and sunken cheeks, still carried the weight of a legacy steeped in triumph and controversy. Fame had abandoned him, but its shadow hadn't. He looked up at me, lips curling faintly, as if he already knew why I was there. "They let just about anyone in these days, huh?" he muttered. His voice was rough, frayed, but beneath it lingered the melodic cadence that once defined him. "I'm not here to talk about your trial," I said, leaning forward, keeping my voice steady. "I'm here to talk about the Order." The smirk vanished. His posture stiffened. Fingers tightened against the edge of the metal table. For a moment, the air thickened, heavy with something unsaid. I wondered if he would speak at all. "You shouldn't know that name," he said at last. His tone was cold, guarded. "But I do," I replied, meeting his gaze without flinching. "And I know about Aaliyah, about the ritual, about the relic." At her name, something flickered behind his eyes, pain, anger, and something far darker. He leaned back, chains clinking softly as if in warning. "You think you know," he said quietly, almost mocking. "But you don't know the half of it." "Then tell me," I pressed. "What don't I know?" He studied me, measuring, weighing whether I was worth the cost of speaking. "What do you want, Wells?" he asked. "Redemption? Answers? Closure?" He shook his head. "There's nothing I can give you that'll make this easier to live with." "I'm not looking for easy," I snapped. "I'm looking for the truth." "The truth," he repeated, tasting the words like poison. "The truth is ugly. It doesn't set you free. It chains you. The Order understands that. They've been playing this game longer than you or I have been alive. Then help me stop them." He laughed, a sharp, bitter sound that echoed off the concrete walls. "Stop them?" He scoffed. "You don't stop the Order. You survive them. If you're lucky, Is that what Aaliyah was doing? I demanded, my voice rising despite myself. Surviving? His expression darkened. For a moment, I thought he might lunge across the table. Instead, he leaned in, lowering his voice to a whisper. You think she was special? He asked. You think she mattered to them? To me, she mattered, I said, forcing the words through clenched teeth. She was more than a pawn. He shook his head slowly, lips curling into a bitter, knowing smile. You don't understand, he said. She wasn't a person to them. She wasn't even a person to me. She was energy, pure, radiant, untapped, the kind of power that lights up rooms, careers, empires. You used her, I said, my voice trembling with rage. You fed on her. I did what everyone else did, he replied without remorse. I took what she had to give, and she gave it willingly at first. The words struck like a blow. And when she didn't? I demanded. He hesitated. His eyes dropped to the table. For the briefest second, I thought I saw regret. It vanished. The order doesn't take no for an answer, he said quietly. They don't ask permission, he said. They see potential and they exploit it. That's what they do. That's what they did to her. I leaned forward, fists clenched against the metal table. If Aaliyah were here right now, I asked, what would you say to her? His eyes snapped back to mine, unreadable. What would I say? He let out a bitter chuckle, shaking his head. I'd tell her the truth, that she was nothing more than a battery. A conduit. She lit the way for all of us. For me, for the industry, for the order. And when she burned out, we moved on. That's how it works. My stomach churned. The room seemed to tilt as his words sank in. She was a person, I said through clenched teeth. She trusted you. She trusted all of you. And she paid the price for it. She paid the price, he replied flatly. Because that's what the order demands. Sacrifice, blood, energy. You think she was the first? The only one? He shook his head slowly. She was just one piece of a puzzle that's been building for centuries. My hands were trembling now, nails digging into the cold metal. And the relic, I asked. What part did it play? He leaned back, the smirk creeping back onto his face. You think you destroyed it? He said. That little victory of yours? He laughed softly. It didn't end anything, Wells. It started something. The relic wasn't meant to be destroyed. It was meant to be activated. Activated? I shot back. What does that even mean? It means you did exactly what they wanted, he said, his voice turning clinical. You set the stage. Now they're moving to the next act. More relics, more bloodlines, more sacrifices. He paused, eyes locked on mine. They don't want to summon the Antichrist, Daniel. They want to build him, piece by piece, blood by blood. My mind raced. How? I demanded. Where? He hesitated, glancing toward the guard stationed by the door. Then he leaned in, lowering his voice to a whisper. Follow the producers, he said. Start with B. Hankerson, and be careful. They see everything. Before I could ask another question, the guard stepped forward, baton tapping sharply against the table. Time's up. As they pulled him to his feet, he turned back one last time. His eyes held something that almost looked like pity. You're already in too deep, Wells, he said. But if you really want to stop them, follow the bloodlines. The door slammed shut behind him. I sat there in silence, his words echoing in my head, twisting darker with every repetition. Aaliyah wasn't just a victim. She was a key, and the order wasn't finished turning the lock. Kelly's voice followed me like a shadow as I left the prison. Follow the producers. Start with B. Hankerson. It wasn't just a lead. It was confirmation of what I'd feared for months. B. Hankerson, Aaliyah's uncle, a titan in the music industry, wasn't just complicit in her fate. He was part of something far older, far more sinister. I sat in my car, the prison looming in my rearview mirror, trying to plan my next move. Hankerson was a fortress, protected by money, influence, and silence. Getting close to him would be like stepping into a lion's den blindfolded. But if he held the next piece of the order's puzzle, I didn't have a choice. I started small, scouring the internet for anything that might point to his movements, his associates, his hidden patterns. And that's when I noticed something no one else had. A name that kept repeating, a symbol that didn't belong, and a date that hadn't happened yet. I searched for his current whereabouts or activities. It didn't take long to find whispers of an abandoned recording studio in Detroit, a place once owned by B. Hankerson, and rumored to be the birthplace of countless hits. It was also the last known location of a mysterious letter tied to the order, one that mentioned a second relic. It felt like a lead, but it was more than that. It was a trap. I knew that going in. The order doesn't leave loose ends lying around. especially not ones that point to their most powerful members. Still, I couldn't ignore the pull. The sense that something was waiting for me there. The recording studio was a ghost of its former self. Its facade, once sleek and modern, was now cracked and overgrown with ivy. The windows were shattered, the parking lot littered with debris. But even in its decay, the place radiated an aura of importance, as if it had absorbed the energy of every song, every secret, every deal that had ever passed through its walls. I parked a block away and approached on foot, my flashlight cutting through the darkness. The front door was chained shut, but the side entrance had been pried open, the lock twisted and useless. I slipped inside. The stale air was heavy with the scent of mildew and abandonment. The main lobby was empty, its reception desk buried beneath a thick layer of dust. Framed platinum records lined the walls, their glass cracked but the names still legible. Aaliyah, Tony Braxton, Timbaland. Each plaque felt like a gravestone, reminder of the lives and careers that had passed through this place. I moved deeper into the building, stepping over broken furniture and scattered papers. The studio rooms were gutted, their equipment long since looted. Then something caught my eye, a faint glow emanating from beneath a door marked Studio A. I pushed it open slowly. My flashlight revealed a room untouched by time. Unlike the rest of the building, Studio A was pristine. The mixing console was intact, its lights blinking softly, as if someone had been using it moments ago. On the wall, a massive portrait of Aaliyah stared down at me, her eyes piercing and enigmatic. On the console, a single item waited, a tarnished metal box, its surface engraved with intricate symbols. My pulse quickened as I approached, the air around me growing colder. I reached out, my fingers trembling, and opened the lid. Inside was a folded piece of paper and a fragment of what looked like a broken artifact. The paper was brittle with age, its edges frayed. I unfolded it carefully, revealing a map marked with an X over a location in Louisiana. Before I could process what I was seeing, the sound of footsteps echoed from the hallway. My heart leapt into my throat as I spun around. Flashlight in one hand, the box clutched in the other. The footsteps grew louder, closer, until they stopped just outside the door. "Wells," a voice called, low and menacing. "We know you're in there." I didn't wait to see who it was. Clutching the box, I bolted for the back exit. My footsteps pounded against the floor behind me. The door slammed open, and I heard the unmistakable click of a gun being cocked. "Stop!" a voice shouted. I didn't. I ducked into a narrow hallway, my flashlight flickering as I ran. Bullets ricocheted off the walls, the deafening cracks pushing me forward. I burst through a side door and into the alley, the cold night air hitting me like a slap. I didn't stop running until I reached my car. I threw the box onto the passenger seat, gunned the engine, and peeled out of the neighborhood. My hands shook on the wheel. My heart raced, my breath coming in short, ragged gasps. But I had what I came for, the second relic, or at least a piece of it. Kelly's words replayed in my mind, sharp and relentless. "Follow the producers. Start with B. Hankerson. Be careful. They see everything. You're already in too deep. Wells, if you really want to stop them, follow the bloodlines." The words twisted darker with each repetition. Aaliyah wasn't just a victim. She was a key, and the order wasn't done turning the lock. The second gunshot rang out, but this time it wasn't aimed at me. The man closest to my car collapsed, a spray of blood marking his fall. Chaos erupted. More shots followed, coming from somewhere in the trees. The remaining agents scattered, shouting orders, returning fire into the darkness. "Over here!" a voice hissed. I turned to see a woman emerge from the shadows, a shotgun slung over her shoulder. She motioned for me to follow. I didn't hesitate. We darted into the swamp, the sounds of gunfire fading as the trees closed in around us. She led me through a labyrinth of roots and shallow water, until we reached a small clearing. A rusted truck waited there, its engine rumbling softly. "Get in," she said, her voice sharp but steady. I climbed into the passenger seat, clutching the relic like a lifeline. She slid behind the wheel and floored it, the truck lurching forward. It wasn't until we were miles away, the swamp fading into the distance, that I finally spoke. "Who the hell are you?" I asked, my voice hoarse. "Elena," she said without looking at me. "And you're welcome for saving your life. Or dragging me deeper into this mess," I shot back. She smirked, her eyes briefly meeting mine. "A little of both." Elena's safe house was a cabin hidden deep in the woods, its exterior camouflaged by overgrown foliage. Inside, the walls were lined with maps, photos, and documents, each connected by strands of red yarn. It was a conspiracy theorist's dream, or a nightmare. "You've been tracking them," I said quietly. My eyes scanned the chaotic web of information. Red strings crisscrossed faces, places, symbols, an entire hidden history mapped out on the walls. How long? I asked. Long enough to know how dangerous they are, Elena said, setting her shotgun on the table. The Order isn't just a cult. They're an institution. They've been pulling strings for centuries using bloodlines and relics to shape history. And you? I asked. What are you, a defector? Her jaw tightened. Something like that. I saw the truth from the inside. And once you see it, there's no unseeing it. I placed the relic on the table. Its faint glow intensified, casting warped shadows across the cabin walls. They want this, I said. Why? Because it's one of the last pieces, she replied, sitting across from me. The relics aren't just keys. They're conduits. When they're brought together, they open a gateway. A cold weight settled in my chest. A gateway to what? She didn't hesitate. To the Antichrist. The word lingered in the air, heavy and suffocating. And Jay-Z? I asked. Where does he fit into this? Elena's expression hardened. He's their next vessel. Not just a symbol, an amplifier. The Order uses influence the way they use blood. Rituals hidden in spectacle. Belief disguised as entertainment. He's not a pawn. He's part of the design. My stomach turned. And B. Hankerson? Her voice dropped, laced with something close to rage. He's the architect. He's been laying the foundation for decades. Aaliyah wasn't collateral damage. She was a sacrifice. A cornerstone. Her blood sealed the first phase. I looked back at the relic, its glow now pulsing slowly like a heartbeat. And now? I asked. Now they're moving to the final stage. Elena crossed the room and handed me a thick folder. Blueprints. Surveillance photos. Handwritten notes packed tight with symbols and coordinates. The weight of it felt crushing. The next ritual is scheduled for the equinox, she said. At the ruins of an amphitheater in Nevada. Ancient site. Perfect acoustics. Perfect geometry. I flipped through the pages. Aerial photographs showed the amphitheater's crumbling stone seats. Hidden tunnels beneath the stage. Markings etched into the ground. Sigils arranged in a pattern. I recognized from the box. If they complete it, she continued, the relics will merge. And once that gateway opens, she didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. I closed the folder slowly. Then we stop it, I said. Elena met my eyes, her expression grim. Or we die trying. The pages were marked with security checkpoints, ceremonial spaces, and what looked like a central stage. My stomach twisted as I took in the sheer scale of the operation. I clenched my fists, the relic heavy in my bag, feeling like a ticking bomb. We have to stop them, I said. Elena nodded, her jaw tightening. Then we'd better move fast, because once that gateway opens, it's game over. The night swallowed us as we left the cabin, the truck's headlights cutting through the darkness. Elena drove with her usual quiet intensity, hands steady on the wheel, eyes fixed on the road. The relic sat in the back seat, its faint glow making it feel more alive than it should have been. The desert stretched out before us, vast and unyielding. I stared out the window. The visions the relic had shown me playing on a loop in my mind. Flames, shadows, and the crushing weight of their plan. Each fragment of the puzzle was more horrifying than the last. You're awfully quiet, Elena said, breaking the silence. Just thinking, I replied, about what we're walking into. She snorted softly, her grip on the wheel tightening. Walking into? I'm dropping you off, remember? I turned to her, startled. What? I told you. I've got my own lead to chase, she said, her voice calm but firm. Something's brewing in Los Angeles. A name came up in my research. A big one. If I can figure out what they're planning there, we might have a shot at stopping this on a larger scale. LA? I repeated, the weight of her words sinking in. You're just going to leave me to handle this on my own? She shot me a sideways glance, her expression unreadable. You've made it this far, haven't you? That's not the point, I said, frustration bubbling to the surface. This isn't some solo mission. If the Order completes this ritual, they won't, she interrupted sharply. You'll stop them. I wouldn't be leaving if I didn't think you could. Her confidence in me was unsettling, almost unnerving. Still, the thought of facing the amphitheater alone made my stomach churn. The first light of dawn crept over the horizon as we neared the outskirts of the amphitheater. Its jagged ruins stood stark against the morning sky, a monument to something long forgotten, or deliberately hidden. From a distance, it looked like a relic of the past. I knew better. Elena pulled the truck to a stop at the edge of a dirt road and cut the engine. This is as far as I go, she said, her voice steady. I hesitated, my hand resting on the door handle. Are you sure about LA? It sounds risky. She smirked faintly, leaning back in her seat. Everything about this is risky. Wells. but if there's even a chance I can find something to help us, I have to take it. I nodded, the lump in my throat growing heavier. I guess this is goodbye then. For now, she said. Just don't die, okay? I'd hate to waste all this effort. I chuckled softly despite the weight of the moment, the tension breaking for just an instant. I'll do my best. As I stepped out of the truck, I turned back, something gnawing at the edge of my thoughts. Elena, I said. What's your full name? She paused, her expression softening for a moment. For a second, I thought she might brush the question off. But instead, she smiled faintly. Elena Vargas, she said. The name hung in the air, carrying a weight I couldn't quite place. I repeated it silently, committing it to memory. Good luck, Wells, she said, her voice low but steady. And with that, she drove off, the truck disappearing into the horizon. The underground chamber throbbed with energy. The air was thick and suffocating. The glow of the relic shards on the altar illuminated the room, casting shifting shadows that danced across the robed figures encircling it. Their chants reverberated off the stone walls, a guttural language older than memory itself. It wasn't just sound, it was vibration. It sank deep into my chest as if the world itself were being rewritten. I crouched behind a column at the chamber's edge, my breath shallow as I tried to steady my pounding heart. The relic in my bag pulsed faintly, its energy resonating with the shards on the altar. It wanted to be reunited, to complete whatever horrifying power the Order sought to unleash. I couldn't let that happen. I had seen what the relic could do when whole, and it wasn't something the world could survive. The ritual was already well underway. With every chant, the shards glowed brighter, the light intensifying until it pressed against my skin. Solid, almost unbearable. Time was slipping through my fingers. If they succeeded, no amount of bravery, planning, or luck would stop what came next. I scanned the chamber for a way to disrupt the ritual. The altar was guarded by 4 robed figures standing at its corners, their hands raised in eerie synchrony with the chant. They weren't visibly armed, but their movements had an unnatural precision that made my stomach churn. At the edge of the room, a generator hummed softly, its thick cables snaking across the floor. The festival above ground had masked the Order's activities, but it had also created a weakness. The generator powered the lights, the sound system, and more importantly, the machinery amplifying the relic's energy. If I could take it out, it might destabilize the ritual, just long enough for me to reach the altar. It was a long shot. It was the only shot I had. I crept toward the generator, keeping low and close to the shadows. The robed figures were too absorbed in their chanting to notice, their voices rising with each passing second. The oppressive energy in the room pressed down on me, but I pushed forward. The generator was an industrial behemoth, its thick cables vibrating with power. I pulled a knife from my pocket, my hand trembling, and slid the blade beneath the largest cable. I slashed. Sparks erupted. The generator sputtered, and the lights in the chamber flickered, then plunged into darkness. The chanting faltered. Confusion rippled through the Order's ranks. The shards on the altar dimmed momentarily, their glow pulsing erratically, like a heart losing its rhythm. Shouts echoed through the chamber. I didn't wait to see how they would respond. I sprinted toward the altar, the shard in my bag burning. The shard burned against my side as the altar pulsed violently. The light from the relics blazed brighter, and the chamber shook as the ritual began to unravel. I was about to retreat, my focus on the collapsing ritual, when I caught movement in the shadows. A figure emerged, striding calmly into the chaotic glow of the relics. It wasn't a robed member of the Order. It was him. Jay-Z. He moved with unsettling grace, his tailored suit immaculate, as if the chaos around him couldn't touch him. The relics reacted instantly to his presence, their light intensifying and bending toward him like iron drawn to a magnet. He walked with purpose, his expression controlled, as though this had all been part of a greater plan. Our eyes met. My breath hitched. His steps faltered for just a fraction of a second, his sharp gaze locking onto mine. His face twisted into something like irritation. Then, without a word, he turned and strode toward the exit. From the shadows, a group of robed figures appeared. Their movements were perfectly synchronized as they closed in around him, forming a protective wall. They moved with an unnatural precision, shielding him like soldiers guarding their king. I followed cautiously, my instincts warring with fear and curiosity. As he reached the chamber's exit, cold desert air spilled inside, sharp against the oppressive heat of the ritual. Outside, a sleek black SUV waited, its surface gleaming under the moonlight. Jay-Z stepped into the open air, his entourage tight around him, their dark robes rippling in the night breeze. He moved toward the vehicle, every step measured and deliberate. Just before he reached it, he stopped. He turned, Our eyes locked once more, and the air itself seemed to still. His gaze pierced the night with an otherworldly intensity. His pupils burned molten red, glowing faintly like embers from an infernal fire. The whites of his eyes were veined with black tendrils that pulsed as though alive, radiating a sickly, malevolent energy. His expression curled into a faint smirk, cold, predatory. The facade of a man peeled away, revealing something ancient and unspeakably dark. My body froze beneath the weight of his stare. It wasn't just hatred, it was power, a silent promise that he knew who I was, and that I had seen too much. The moment shattered as he slid into the SUV. The robed figures followed swiftly. The engine roared and they disappeared into the night, leaving me trembling in the silence. I had stopped the ritual, but I hadn't stopped him. The cold desert air clawed at my skin as I stumbled away from the amphitheater. The relics were destroyed, the ritual was disrupted, but the weight of what I had witnessed bore down on me like a physical force. Each step felt heavier. The adrenaline drained away, replaced by a hollow emptiness. I glanced back at the ruins, now darker than the surrounding desert. The stars above were distant, indifferent to the horror I had just witnessed. I was alive, barely. I had no idea what came next. As I trudged forward, a faint outline of a vehicle appeared on the horizon. My heart pounded as I approached cautiously. The truck was battered and dust-covered, but it was eerily familiar, identical to Elena's. The driver's door creaked open easily. Inside, I found the keys dangling in the ignition. There were no footprints in the sand, no sign of anyone nearby. The keys were warm, as if they had been left only moments ago. Unease clawed at my chest, but I climbed in and turned the key. The truck roared to life. Whatever this was, it was my way out. As I pulled onto the empty highway, the air inside the cab grew heavy. Then in the corner of my eye, I saw her, Aaliyah. Her form was faint but unmistakable. Her eyes glowed softly, filled with sadness and urgency. Her lips moved, but the words felt less like sound and more like a presence pressing into my mind. "I don't know what Jay-Z did to me," she said, her voice carried on the wind. But it wasn't just him. "There's something bigger, something darker." I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles white. "I can't rest until the truth is known," she continued. Her image flickered, her voice cracking. "I'll help you," she said. "We'll find the truth together." And then she was gone. But her presence lingered. This wasn't just about the relics anymore. Jay-Z wasn't just part of the order. He was their keystone. And together we would expose the darkness. Like and subscribe. Let's expose the truth.